Hi folks, and welcome to this week's edition of All About Real Estate. I'm Gary Hennessy from Professionals Reynella. Last week you'll remember we were talking about pre-approvals for home loans. This week we're going to talk about that big scary subject. It's not really, because we've got a guy who's going to tell us it's not. That subject of bridging loans. And again, we'd like to introduce back into our office the good guy from Professionals. Come on in, Richard.
Thanks, Gary. How are you?
You remember Richard from last week from Professionals Real Estate Home Loans. Now, bridging loans. It's one of those things that we find people, when you mention it, there's almost like they freeze up and go, oh, not a bridging loan. It's like this big boogeyman living in the cupboard sort of thing. Why would people get a bridging loan, first of all?
Yeah, there's probably two occasions when bridging finance would be available, or not as much available, but appropriate for people. And really it comes down to they've identified a property they want to purchase. Right. However, they haven't yet made arrangements to sell their existing property, or indeed they perhaps might not want to sell it just yet.
Yeah, so it's like they said, oh, let's just go and have a wander around and see what's available. Walked into this house and go, oh, we love this. And go, oh, well, how are we going to afford it? Because they haven't even prepared their home for sale yet.
Exactly.
So that's where a bridging loan would be appropriate.
Bridging finance would give them time to make the arrangements to sell their existing property.
So they could then spend that time making sure their home is prepared, like we've been talking about over the previous weeks, and get the best price for their home. Okay, well, you said there were two
The other occasion perhaps would be if someone had plans to construct a new home for themselves, and they didn't want to sell their existing property before that construction took place, and they're in a position to move into the new home.
In fact, I've got a client at the moment who's doing exactly that. They started construction about 4 or 5 months ago, and they're going to be putting their home on the market, and they organised this sort of loan so that they could not have to go out, and because if you don't do that, you've got to sell your home, and then you're basically looking at two moves, don't you? You've got to sell and then rent something and wait for your home to be built.
You'd have two moves, exactly. The alternative would be to sell your home to give you the cash to start the construction process. However, during the construction you've got nowhere to live, so there's making arrangements.
So it's really, it actually helps people reduce the amount of stress in that transition.
It can make it a lot easier.
Absolutely. Now, the thing that comes across to me when I talk to people most is they're terrified that, it's going to be this ridiculous interest rate. Is a bridging loan a massively more expensive loan than a normal loan?
Absolutely not, Gary. Perhaps traditionally that may have been the case. A bridging loan perhaps used to have been seen as being quite an expensive alternative.
A chance to gouge some money out of the poor consumer?
Perhaps so. In current financial arrangements, generally speaking, lenders charge around about the same sort of interest rates as they would on any other standard variable type product.
Right. And so, so we've organised a bridging loan. We're now faced with this issue of, I've got two loans, so do I have to pay two loans while this is all happening? How does that work?
That's not the case, Gary, because obviously people's incomes don't perhaps double just during that period. So the banks, the whole idea of a bridging facility is such that any costs and interest accumulate over the term until the bridging loan is paid out. And what happens is when the existing property is finally sold, that portion of the loan is paid out of the proceeds of that sale once it settles.
Okay, so someone takes a bridging loan on, they've got a house for sale, they've just purchased this lovely new house. Now they've got a little bit of time to get theirs ready because there's a settlement period on the new home. But how long, what sort of time frame are they working with in terms of being able to get their home sold to move into the new home? Like, how long would the bridging loan generally run for?
Generally speaking, between the lenders, probably between 6 or 12 months, depending on the circumstances, but somewhere in that time frame.
So it's not like you've got to be able to sell within 4 weeks?
Absolutely not. There's certainly usually plenty of time to make the required arrangements.
Right. Now, I can tell you from a real estate point of view, when you've got the bridging loan organised, it just makes the process of negotiating so much better. You come in and you say, I've got my finance, I do have a house to sell, but I'm not going to make the sale subject to the sale of my home, so you're able to negotiate a fair bit better. The other thing is that if you buy subject to the sale of your home, there's a clause in the contract which actually says this purchase is subject to the sale of the purchaser's home for a price of not less than. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but I would like to suggest that if you spoke to a lawyer and they said, what happens if I got an offer for that minimum figure and not any more, I'm pretty sure you're going to get some advice that says you'd actually have to sell at that low price. So bridging loan makes really good sense. If you'd like to have a talk to Richard, how do they get in contact with you again, Richard?
Gary, people can call me direct on 0409 273 564, or they're welcome to click on the Home Loans tab of the Professionals Real Estate website.
Mate, again, thank you very much for coming in.
Been my pleasure.
And,
thanks, Gary.
we hope to send you plenty of business. All right, that's it for this week, folks. Next week, we're going to be starting, as I said, this process of what does a buyer have to do? And we're going to be looking at 4 questions that you need to ask yourself about the home you want to buy before you've even walked out the door. That's it for this week. I'm Gary Hennessy from Professionals Reynella, and we hope you have a great week. We'll catch you again next week. Thank you.